Hello, third grade, and welcome to Lesson 3 in Social Studies. We're going to be reading about how the climate in our community impacts the community. Climates of the United States. How would you describe your community to someone from another state? You might tell about the weather, or you might describe the summer and winter activities. You could tell about the ways people in your community make a living. You might describe the plants and animals around you. All of these things are related to the climate where you live. The climate map shows the different climates in the United States. In some parts of the United States, the summers are hot and humid and the winters are mild. In other parts of the country, the summers are warm and humid, but the winters are very cold. Humidity is the measure of how much moisture is in the air. Humidity makes the air feel warmer. A humid climate is also more likely to have rain. Some areas of the United States are dry and some are desert. In regions with very mild seasons, summer and winter weather are very similar. Most of Alaska has cold Arctic temperatures. Hawaii is tropical with warmer weather and lots of precipitation, which falls as rain. The climate of a community affects how people live and how many people live there. It also affects the kind of homes people build and the type of work they do. So when we're talking about climate, we're not talking about what the weather is like today compared to what it was like 2 weeks ago. We're talking about overall, what is it like there most of the time? A desert in general is hot and dry. Does it rain sometimes? Yes. Is it cold sometimes? Yes. But most of the time it's hot and dry, and that's what we use to describe the climate. When we're talking about the humidity in an area, we're talking about the amount of moisture or wetness that you feel in the air. So sometimes on hot summer days, the air might feel kind of sticky. That means there's a lot of humidity in the air, right? There's a lot of moisture in the air. And precipitation is just a fancy way of saying water falling from the sky. So precipitation can be rain, snow, hail, all of these things. Anytime some form of water is falling from the sky, we call it precipitation. Usually they're talking about rainfall specifically. Now over here on page 31, we have a climate map of the United States. Now a climate map is color-coded to show you what the climate is like in specific areas. So if we zoom in on this map over here, let's see if we can get it to come up a little bit more clearly. Okay, I guess not. Now, on our climate map, you can see that there's different colors for different kinds of climates. So the tropical climate is usually warm and wet. You'll see the tip of Florida, the Hawaii out in the Pacific Ocean has a tropical climate. The desert climates you can see over here where we have Death Valley and right above Mexico, sort of on the northern part, on the tip right there, we can see we've got more desert regions and a couple little ones scattered in between. Dry regions, that's most of the West Coast and the Midwest. We've got a lot of dry regions over here. California in particular, you can see is dry. Oregon and some parts of Washington are dry. A lot of these middle states are also very dry. Now, the mild seasons, which are, doesn't get too hot, doesn't get too cold, is also California, and a few parts that are a bit east of California, where we don't get snow and we don't get, blistering hot summers. We usually have mild, moderate temperatures that are usually pretty nice. Humid summers with mild winters is our green areas. So that's pretty much the entire southeastern region and part of the western region. Humid summers and cold winters is usually in our northern region. So that means the summers are warm and feel kind of sticky. The winters are really cold. They usually get snowfall over there. Cool to cold is going to be in our gray regions. And the long cold winters and short summers are going to be our more turquoise regions. So think of places like Alaska and a couple of these places that are scattered. Let's go ahead and go on to our next page and see what we're going to do next. Okay, Life in dry and desert climates. So before we get started farther into the book, this is our textbook that we started with, we're going to take a look at our workbook pages. So again, we're learning about how climate impacts our community. We're going to use our skills to figure out how climate impacts the way people live, the kind of activities they can do, the number of people that can live in a place. All of these things are very heavily impacted by the climate. That means the climate has a really big effect on what people can do. So if you live in a climate that has no snow, you can't go snowboarding or skiing. You can't do snow activities because you don't have snow. If you live in a place that's out in the Midwest where there's no oceans, you can't do ocean sports. You can't go surfing or swimming in the ocean because of the climate and because of the resources that are available there. Okay, climate helps describe a region. The climate of the region makes a big difference. Climate is the weather a region has over a long period of time. California's Death Valley is the hottest and driest place in the United States. There's very little precipitation. That means in the Death Valley region, in that desert area, because it's very hot and dry, they also get very, very little rainfall in any form. In an average year, there may be less than 2 inches of rain. This can be very challenging. Living in a cold climate can also be challenging. Keeping homes and offices and schools warm in cold climates can be expensive. Blizzards can cause power outages. So just like there's challenges if you live in a very hot place, there's also challenges if you live in a very cold place. Now we're going to take a look at this bar graph that we have underneath, and it's titled The Average Monthly Low Temperature in International Falls, Montana. So we can see the different months over here, January, February, March, across the bottom, it's labeled with months. And up the side, we can see the temperature measured in degrees of Fahrenheit. Now take a look at this graph. The month that has the lowest temperature is going to be January, and that makes sense because that's one of our winter months. That's when we've got some of the coldest temperatures. Now their warmest temperatures is going to be around July, and that's only at 53 degrees. So if you're thinking about 53 degrees here in California, that's really cold. That's a temperature we don't see too often. One of the coldest communities in the continental United States is International Falls, Minnesota. Sorry, I said Montana earlier. International Falls, Minnesota. In an average year, International Falls gets almost 6 feet of snow and over 2 feet of rain. The amount of precipitation is challenging too. Snow can make it difficult to get to school and to stores. Rain can cause flooding. So let's take a look at this line graph that we have here on top. And we can see that it measures months and it measures the snowfall in inches. Now we can see that January and December have the greatest amount of snowfall, which makes sense. Again, those are winter months. The least amount of snowfall, or where there's no snowfall, is May to September. And those are usually our warmer summerish months. So it makes sense when you take a look at the graph and you take a look at the data that there wouldn't be any snow between May and September. And then in our colder months is when we see snow increase and precipitation increase. Now we're going to go on to our Explore Main Idea and Details page, and we're going to take a look at our graphic organizer. Now, based on what we read, we're going to work on completing this graphic organizer. So we have our topic is climate, our main idea, and then we're going to put in details. So for your main idea here, we learned that climate impacts all aspects of life in a community. It impacts the activities that people can do, the type of shelter and clothing that they need, the number of people that live there, and so on. So that you're going to put in your main idea, and then you're going to put in additional details from those previous pages that we read. Now for pages 30 to 39 in your textbook, you're going to need to read those pages in order to complete your graphic organizer here on page 37 in your workbook. So for dry desert areas, we're going to put our main idea and then list details: warm summers and cold winters, humid summers and mild winters, and then mild seasons. You'll put the main idea from each of the passages and additional details. My suggestion to you is to stop after each passage, fill in the information before you read the next one. That way you're not forgetting the information as you go. Life in dry and desert climates. Most of the western half of the United States has a dry or desert climate. What does this mean for people, plants, and animals that live there? Dry parts of the region get 10 to 20 inches of precipitation each year. Deserts in the region are even drier. They can be hot or cold. What they have in common is that they get very little precipitation. Parts of New Mexico, Arizona, and California may only get 3 inches of rain each year. Death Valley in California's Mojave Desert is the lowest, driest, and hottest place in the United States. Not many people live in these dry areas. This is because people need water. Plants and animals that are native to the desert can survive with very little water. Water from the Colorado River has made it possible for people to live and farm in the southwestern deserts. Dams, canals, and pipelines move water from the river to the dry areas. Settlers in the Great Plains drilled wells to find underground water. They used simple windmills to bring the water to the surface. This gave them water for people, crops, and livestock such as cattle, sheep, and horses. Even with river water and windmills, not many people live in these dry and desert areas. Most of the people who do live in dry regions live in towns or cities. While there are not as many urban areas in the Southwest, there are still several large cities. Denver, Colorado is the largest city in the Great Plains. Livestock and crops are processed in Denver. From there, they are shipped to other parts of the country. Phoenix, Arizona is the 5th largest city in the United States. Farmers and ranchers on the Great Plains grow wheat, corn, cotton, and livestock feed. They also raise cattle and sheep. Natural resources also draw people. These resources include gold, silver, copper, and oil, and minerals such as borax and gemstones. So let's stop and think about our reading. Over here, life in dry and desert climates is challenging, and not many people live in these areas because there's not enough water to support them. Now, some of the important details that we need to pay attention to is that in order for people to have water, they need to bring it in from other sources. So either they are building pipelines to bring in water, or they are digging for wells to find underground water. Now, the vocabulary word that we have on these pages is the words natural resources. Natural resources are things that are found in the earth. They're not things that people make or things that people bring in. These are things that are found in nature. Did you know Joshua trees? One place in the desert people like to visit is Joshua Tree National Park in the Mojave Desert near Palm Springs, California. The park is named after the kind of tree found in the park. Joshua trees are a kind of tree well adapted to the desert. Joshua trees live around 150 years, but some are much older. In order to flower, Joshua trees need a winter freeze and spring rains. Some Joshua trees stand straight, while others have twisting and crooked branches. The straighter the Joshua tree stands, the fewer times it has bloomed. Native Americans made baskets and sandals from the leaves of the Joshua trees. Settlers used Joshua trees for firewood and fence posts. So go ahead and fill in your graphic organizer with the information we talked about and the information we read. Then we're going to go on to our next part, life with cold winters. Winter in the Northeast and Midwest states are much colder than the rest of the country. These two regions have 4 seasons. Winters are cold with fewer daylight hours. In spring and summer, with more hours of daylight, plants grow and flower. Spring and summer are busy times for farmers in the Midwest. Corn and soybeans are important crops in Indiana, Michigan, and Illinois. Wheat and hay are also grown in this region. Wisconsin is known for its dairy products. In fall, the air cools and the days become shorter. The leaves change color and drop from the trees. People, plant, plants, and animals prepare for another cold winter. In the winter, blizzards bring cold wind and heavy snow. Cities around the Great Lakes have especially heavy snowfalls. In Indiana, for instance, areas near Lake Michigan average 5 or more feet of snow in a year, average 5 feet more snow in a year than areas in southern Indiana. Chicago, Illinois, gets about 3 feet of snow each winter. The Atlantic Ocean also affects climate. A storm called a nor'easter brings heavy rain, snow, and strong winds to the Northeast. Nor'easters can cause major damage to property and businesses. So we see that winters are felt the most in our Northeast and Midwestern states. They get much colder than the other parts of the countries. We know that these areas are particularly important for farming, and they provide food to the rest of the country. We talked about what happens during the different seasons and different parts of the year in those particular regions. Pine and hardwood trees cover northern regions of the Northeast and Midwest. Deer, elk, caribou, gray wolves, and black bears make their homes there. Bears, raccoons, squirrels, and other animals hibernate or sleep through the cold months. Birds such as ducks and geese fly to warmer areas before winter. They return in the spring to build nests and raise their young. So we can see over here the different kinds of animals that live in those areas. We learned that some animals will hibernate throughout the winter, while other animals will migrate to a warmer climate during the winter and then return in the springtime. Although the winters are cold, some of the largest cities in the United States are here. New York, Newark, and Boston lie on the Atlantic coast. The cities are important seaports. In the cold winters, when temperatures are falling below 32 degrees Fahrenheit, people living in these cities need to be prepared to live in freezing temperatures. They bundle up in warm winter coats, boots, scarves, and mittens. People get their houses ready for winter too. They put in storm doors and windows. They insulate doors and pipes. Lots of snow brings winter activities. These winter sports include ice skating, sledding, and cross-country skiing. People build snowmen, throw snowballs, and fish through holes cut in the ice. Sometimes they sit outside in the cold beside these holes. Other times, fishermen stay warm by sitting in shacks that they built over the ice holes. So over here, we can see that wintertime does bring a lot of challenges, and winter is felt most strongly in the Northeast and Midwestern regions of the United States. Some important details that we learned about is that some of the animals there will hibernate while others will migrate to other places. We also learned that people need to prepare themselves and their homes for winter by insulating different parts of their homes like pipes so that they don't get frozen, by keeping themselves warm, by changing the type of clothing that they're wearing, and that a lot of really fun winter activities come with this climate, with this particular climate. Life with humid summers. Look back at the climate map. Which part of the country has hot summers and mild winters? The climate is found in the south. Remember that humidity makes the air feel warmer. When the weather is hot and humid, it feels even hotter than the actual temperature. Hot and humid summer weather often causes tornadoes. These are common in parts of the southeast. The southern and Gulf states are also impacted by hurricanes. Both hurricanes and tornadoes can destroy property and cause injury and death. From April 26th to April 28th, 2011, as many as 300 tornadoes swept through this region. Many people were killed or injured, and entire towns were destroyed. So far what we read is that when we're talking about a climate that has high humidity or a lot of humidity, it makes it feel even hotter than it actually is because the air is warm and sticky. And they gave us an interesting fact from April 26th to April 28th. That's just 2 days. As many as 300 tornadoes swept through this region. Now, the region we're talking about over here is the southern region and the states around the Gulf of Mexico. Today, farmers use the hot, humid climate to grow corn, tobacco, and livestock feed. They also grow peaches, apples, and citrus fruits. Florida is known for its oranges, grapefruit, and tangerines. Native trees include pine as well as oak, maple, and other hardwoods. Mangrove trees are found in southern Florida. Alligators, crocodiles, and panthers, river otters, and bobcats live in the Everglades of Florida. So we read about the different animals that live there, the different kind of plants that live there. We talked about some of the challenges and things that they deal with when they have hot, humid summers. Now, one thing to pay attention to is that humidity can also be dangerous for an area, heat and humidity, because we're talking about things coming up like tornadoes and hurricanes that can cause a lot of damage and can cause a lot of injury and possible deaths to the people that live there. Now, the difference between hurricanes and tornadoes is hurricanes need to start over water. So they'll start usually out in the water and then move onto land, where tornadoes are strictly on land. They start on land and they move through land. Perspectives. Gladsman. The Florida Everglades is an area of on the southern tip of Florida. It's made up of wet, swampy land. Native Americans live in the Everglades before the Spanish arrived. Colonists who settled in the Everglades wanted farmland. They dug canals to drain the swamps. This destroyed the plants and drove out native animals. Gladesmen are people who do not try to change the Everglades. They learn to survive on the resources around them. They travel through the swampy wilderness for weeks to hunt and fish. Sometimes they're gone for weeks to months. They build temporary camps. They've learned what types of plants they can eat. They pay attention to the rising and falling water levels of the swamp. The Everglades National Park was created in 1947. Its purpose is to preserve and restore the environment of the Everglades. Gladesmen serve as guides for researchers who want to explore the Everglades. Glade skiffs are small boats that can navigate the narrow canals of the Florida Everglades. And you can see a picture of one of these skiffs down here at the bottom. All right, and on to our last section about mild seasons, or places that have mild weather. The West Coast and Hawaii have milder weather than most of the country. Oregon, Washington, and Northern California have warm summers. Winters are cool and rainy. The rain in the Northwest produces rainforests. Some of the oldest and largest trees in the world grow in these rainforests. The temperature in Southern California does not change much throughout the year. If there's not enough precipitation, plants and grasses dry up. This can lead to dangerous wildfires. The mild weather of Southern California allows farmers to grow crops all year round. Oranges, lemons, avocados, strawberries, and vegetables are grown there. Tourists visit California to enjoy the mild weather and the beaches. Californians enjoy casual culture. Many people wear comfortable clothes such as shorts and flip-flops all year long. The state of Hawaii is a group of islands in the Pacific. The weather in the state is tropical. The weather on a day in December is not too different from a day in June. The beaches and coastal areas are drier than the island. Interiors. Some parts of the Big Island receive 230 inches of rain a year. Other places have barely a foot of rain. Hawaii's mild weather and beautiful scenery draws tourists from around the world. The islands were formed by volcanoes. Some of these volcanoes are still active. At Volcanoes National Park, people can watch lava flow into the ocean. In 2018, several cracks opened in the Kilauea volcano. Lava flows destroyed homes, and dangerous gas caused health problems. Early settlers brought pineapples and sugarcane to Hawaii. The tropical climate was ideal for growing these. These became two of Hawaii's most important crops. Other crops are flowers, macadamia nuts, and coffee. The climate makes tourism Hawaii's most important industry. When the weather is cold in many areas, people like to come to Hawaii to enjoy the tropical climate. Hotels and apartments now cover some farmland. Visitors soak up the sun, go surfing, and enjoy the beaches. They hike in the jungles and visit the volcanoes. So let's go back to our workbook. You guys should have been filling this in as we go along with important information about each one of these. Once you've completed your graphic organizer using neat handwriting and checking your spelling, we're going to go on and take a look at page 28 and 29. For page 28, it says, write and cite evidence. Write a diary entry describing how the climate in your community impacted something you've done in the past. And for page 29, under where it says connect to the essential question, think about how climate affects your community. How does this help you understand why it matters where you live? Once you've completed these questions, we'll be done with this lesson. If you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.